Good morning and welcome to worship. We're recording the videos this week for the service of Christ the King on Thursday the 23rd of November and on Sunday the 26th. The preacher is the Reverend Ian Hawkridge, and I will be leading the worship on that particular Sunday the 26th. A couple of notices that I'd like to draw to your attention. The first one is that we have a life group communion on Wednesday the 29th. Next Wednesday the 29th, will be our life group communion. It'll be at the church at 6:30, and we're using it also as an opportunity, an information sharing session with all involved. If you're a member of a group, whether it be a life group, the men or the women's group, any other group in the church, you're welcome to attend and share in that evening together. It'll be a short evening, only about an hour. And then on the following evening, we're having our next edition of Table Talk. And so we ask members of our congregation to use the digital or the paper invitation that has been prepared and circulated both on the WhatsApp group and also on in the intimations, to invite friends and neighbors, people who may not be interested in being part of a formal church, but are interested in being part of a conversation, a spiritual conversation. Garth Jaffet is our speaker from Heartlines and so on. He's our speaker next week on Thursday the 30th, beginning at 6 o'clock. And then I want to tell you about the events over the weekend of the 9th and 10th of December. On the 9th, on the Saturday afternoon, Bevan and his choir are coming to put on the event that they put on in the past, slightly different songs and so on, but it's called Christmas in Music and Song. And it'll be at 3 o'clock on the Saturday afternoon, the 9th December. And tickets are 60 Rand each. You can get them from the church office. You can also purchase them after the services. And on the Sunday, at 8 o'clock on Sunday the 10th, we will have a carol service at United Church. And then following at 10 o'clock, Yanni du Toit, South African musician, is putting on a musical program for us in lieu of the service. So instead of the service on the 10th of December, there will be a wonderful music concert. No tickets, it's come free seating at 10 o'clock, Yanni du Toit and his team. So listen now as Julia Clegg reads the scriptures for us.
Today's reading is from Ezekiel chapter 34, 11 to 16, and then verses 20 to 24, and this is read from the New International Version. For this is what the Sovereign Lord says, I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. As a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he is with them, so will I look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered on a day of clouds and darkness. I will bring them out from the nations and gather them from the countries, and I will bring them into their own land. I will pasture them on the mountains of Israel, in the ravines and in all the settlements in the land. I will tend them in a good pasture, and the mountain heights of Israel will be their grazing land. There they will lie down in good grazing land, and there they will feed in a rich pasture on the mountains of Israel. I myself will tend my sheep and make them lie down, declares the Sovereign Lord. I will search for the lost and bring back the strays. I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak, but the sleek and the strong I will destroy. I will shepherd the flock with justice. Verses 20 to 24. Therefore, this is what the Sovereign Lord says to them. See, I myself will judge between the fat sheep and the lean sheep. Because you shove with flank and shoulder, butting all the weak sheep with your horns until you have driven them away, I will save my flock, and they will no longer be plundered. I will judge between one sheep and another. I will place over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will tend them. He will tend them and be their shepherd. I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David will be prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken. And there endeth the reading.
This Sunday is celebrated in churches around the world as Christ the King Sunday. And you may well be wondering why the reading is all about sheep and shepherds. This passage from Ezekiel is part of God's judgment upon the kings and leaders of Israel and contrasts their leadership with God's intended leadership. The reference to David looks forward to the time of Jesus, who, as David's descendant, became God's shepherd king of Israel. The problem that we sit with in the 21st century is that we know very little about kings and probably less about sheep and shepherds. At the time that Ezekiel was living, kings were a great deal more than mere figureheads that we know today. They wielded absolute authority and could do whatever they chose. The history of Israel's kings is mostly a story of corruption and mismanagement, which God judged again and again through the prophets. Shepherds, on the other hand, were at the lowest end of society. Most of them did not own the sheep, but herded them for someone else. They spent a great deal of their time wandering around, looking for food for the sheep and protecting them from thieves and wild animals. Because of their work, they were often smelly and dirty. Yet without them, Israel would have been hungry and naked. Sheep are not the brightest of animals, and they need to be cared for. There's a story which illustrates this well, and you can find it throughout most of Africa. My version comes from the Transkei. There were three friends, a dog, a goat, and a sheep, who decided to take a trip in a taxi. After waiting at the edge of the road, they climbed into the first taxi that came along. The sheep duly paid her fare and sat down. The goat sat near the door and said that he would pay when they arrived. And the dog handed the driver a large banknote demanding change. The driver said that he would have to wait for more passengers to pay before the dog could have his change, and then they set off. When they arrived at their destination, the goat sprang out of the taxi and ran away. The driver said that the dog would have to obtain his change from the goat, who hadn't paid, and the sheep clambered out and slowly walked across the road. That is why, when a vehicle comes along the road in the Transkei, you will see the goats running away, the dogs chasing the vehicle in search of their change, and the sheep standing sheepishly in the middle of the road. I've spent many years of my life working among sheep and cattle farmers, but have come across very few real shepherds. One of the places in southern Africa where you will see true shepherds is in the highlands of Lesotho, where a friend of mine worked for many years as a missionary. He told a story which came from that area. In the mountains, people are scattered in small villages, and each village has its own herd of sheep. Each family may only have 1 or 2 sheep, but together they're entrusted to the care of 1 or more young men, whose job it is to protect them and to make sure that they have food. There was a boy of about 12 or 13 who was a shepherd in the mountains. One day, as the weather was closing in and it was becoming dark, he couldn't find one of the lambs of the flock. He drove the other sheep into the stone kraal, where they would stay for the night, and went out to look for the lamb. The next day, his family set out to take the young man some food, and found the flock still safe in the stone enclosure. But there was no sign of the shepherd. The snow had fallen, and there was little chance of following tracks, but they nevertheless decided to look for him. Eventually they found him buried in a drift of snow. He had died of exposure. But as they tried to lift him, there was movement under his body. On looking more closely, they found the lamb underneath the boy, still alive and hungrily looking for its mother. His body had protected the lamb from the freezing cold, even though he had died himself. So we're presented here with the contrast between despotic kings of old and the shepherd who gives his life for the sheep. We are those sheep, even though we don't like to admit it. And we depend on the generosity and care of the God who comes to us as our shepherd king. Jesus is referred to again and again as this shepherd who seeks out the weak and the hungry. He carries the young in his arms and lays down his life for the sake of the sheep. This is the King we celebrate today with thanks and with joy. Not only does he take care of the flock, he also sees that there is justice in the flock. In the second part of the reading, the prophet speaks of fat sheep and thin sheep. And in any flock, there will always be those that push in and grab all the grazing. Jesus is equally concerned that the young and frail have their fair share of what is available. And in the church, if we are listening, we will hear him speaking not only to those who lead badly, but to those who follow badly too. If the shepherd king is to be our leader, then his concerns need to be our concerns. Each one of us is of equal concern to the shepherd, and we are challenged to become like him in his care for the sheep, offering indiscriminate love to those around us. Amen. As I try to do from time to time, I include a song with this sermon because people don't remember sermons, but they do remember songs. Like sheep without a shepherd, we need compassion, Lord. Though the harvest may be plentiful, we're slow to hear your words. As you walk into our cities and the towns in which we live, healing lives and freeing captives through your love forever give. Send us out to be your witnesses, clothed with your tools of grace, to bring your missing children home. Oh, let us see your face. Let us feel your smile upon us, for without your gift of love, we are lost and hopeless people. Lead us on, O Holy Dove. Send us out to be your witnesses, clothed with your tools of grace, to bring your missing children home. Oh, let us see your face. Let us feel your smile upon us, for without your gift of love, we are lost lost and hopeless people, lead us on, O Holy Dove. Lead us on, O Holy Dove. Lead us on, O Holy